I'm honored to have with me Potkin Azarmehr from London via Persia or vice versa. And Potkin, can you tell us how to make sense of our world?
I wish I could, Randall. Yeah, thanks for having me back again. I'm not going to pretend I can make sense of our world because it really isn't making sense to me. One of the things that actually has really blown me away is yesterday I spent a few hours reading a paper that has been published by Policy Exchange. It's an influential think tank in the UK, and it's called Tehran Calling, and it's about Iran's network of influence in the UK. Even though it's 87 pages, it still doesn't include everything, but it's pretty good. It's pretty comprehensive, and it talks about various Iran outlets in the UK. Most of its, or a good chunk of its operations in the UK in the last 20 years. It's missing a few things, but the good thing about it is it's all amalgamated into one paper. And it's mind-blowing, even for someone like me who's investigated a lot of these things, who's written about these things. For example, the paper makes a recommendation about to the MI5 about bringing back the subversion operation, and it's referring to something called the I never knew what it's called, but what it's called Operation Foot, but it's called Operation Foot in 1971. Don't know what it's called Operation Foot, but what it was about was Britain expelled something like 105 Soviet agents because it becomes such an easy target, and the Soviets were using their agents to influence, to peddle their influence and to do their clandestine operations. And then after that, Britain became a harder target for the Soviets. So on a similar note, it's recommending expulsion of all these Iranian agents and operatives, or at least not giving any further visas. Now, when it came to visas, this is something that blew me away. In the last 20 years, Britain has given at least 100 visas for Iranian agents to come over to as ministers of religion or as religious workers. 8 of these 100 have got residency permits. They're British citizens, basically. And I pretty much suspect one of them was the first head of the Islamic Center in Maida in North London, Ayatollah Araki, who had a tenure of about 10 years. The reason I think he's definitely got residency is because I know his family are living here, and he keeps coming and going frequently to the UK, so he can't be sort of like applying for a visa every time. And he's a member of the Assembly of Experts in Iran, so it's a very powerful body. It can actually decide the next supreme leader. So can you imagine, like, the UK authorities have given someone a loyal cohort of the supreme leader in Iran, who is in a powerful position to decide the next supreme leader, British citizenship. Now, this same guy in the last uprising in Iran said, you shouldn't call the protesters as people. You shouldn't refer to protesters as people. So it's just, in a way, it's just heartbreaking to see all this incompetence, to see, sometimes you just want to give up. You just say, look, what is the matter with this establishment? Like, you're talking about a hostile state that chants death to England every Friday, that you're almost going to war with, that has killed so many of your military servicemen and kidnapped so many of the citizens. And it's just like a free for all. Yeah, come in and have a religious centre and send your people. We even give them British citizenships, and their families can settle here, and they can have sensitive jobs. Where does all this stupidity end? Is it stupidity? Is it madness? Or have they been bribed?
Well, that's what I was going to say. I mean, there's a price for everything and everybody, and oftentimes it's far too. It's really cheap. I had an attorney who used to say that local government was your best corruption dollar value, and I actually think he was only half right. There's a certain aspect that you can get things that you want. I don't engage in that either way, local, national, federal, state, or whatever. But I actually think he's wrong based on what we've seen. Is that I think national governments is your best corruption dollar value. You can get so much if you're big enough. If you're big enough to get them on the smell on the trail, then you can certainly buy huge fissures and gaps, and you can create enormous changes and the way money gets spent by that government. The money that kind of flowed through Ukraine into the Biden family was a huge, incredible investment. Who would have thought like giving money to Joe Biden's, and he was mediocre as a senator, or mediocre as a vice president, and out of office. And no one, I never thought he'd come back as a president in 2016 or whatever. And to give his son that amount of money in China, well, huge investment, great payback. I mean, it turned millions into billions, or I don't know what even the number is that now we've spent on Ukraine. But so there might very well be something happening. I feel the same way about a fair amount of the press, that the stuff they say is can't be that stupid. These are not idiots writing this stuff, and I presume they're not idiots in government. So I hope they get their equivalent of a nice little dacha someplace in the countryside or whatever. As a result, they're useful idiots, and I hope they're getting paid.
I mean, I don't think that our politicians, our current representatives, are the cleverest people. But like you say, they can't be that stupid. No way. So they must be bribed. They must have been bribed, and it's time for security services to examine this. We've just found out also that there is a network of an Islamic network within the Home Office, which is working hard to employ and recruit more Muslims into the Home Office and issue more visas for Muslims. So the whole establishment is infiltrated.
Yeah.
And I really don't know how they're going to untangle this network. They need to, they keep coming up with legislations, but the legislations are not being implemented. So like last July, there was a lot of hoo-ha about this thing called New National Security Law, which got the royal assent in July last year. So we're not talking about parliamentary debates or anything. This is now an act, right? So, and part of this new national, and it was designed specifically to combat the threats from 3 hostile states, which were Russia, China, and Iran.
Mm-hmm.
And part of this new national security law is FIRS, which is Foreign Influence Register Scheme. And the idea is that anyone who's acting on behalf of another state should register their interests, or they're breaking the law. Now, where is this being implemented? Because there's clearly people here that are acting on behalf of the Iranian regime. Are they registered anywhere? If they're not registered, are they not breaking the law? So what are you doing about it? So, I keep hearing the MPs, they say, oh, yeah, we're going to bring another legislation. Forget bringing legislation. You've got all the legislations that you need. You just can't implement it.
It's an amazing thing. I kind of want people to take a look at your Twitter feed at some point. So maybe I'll pop it up here. If I can find it. You've been had kind of you're from Iran, and I want people to follow you to get some of your thoughts and whatnot. But Iran has obviously been in the news far too much of late, and I'm not sure it's going to stop right off the bat. I'm wondering what's your take on little Parry? Not little. I mean, it could have been devastating. I don't think it was intended to be kind of the just slap on the wrist on Israel that it turned out to be. One person dead. I don't know, maybe more at this point, but very little damage. What do you think Iran's intent was? It sounds to me as if they were kind of telegraphing the move and letting everybody know this is going to be. It's going to be finite. What do you think's there in their cards now, henceforth, and so forth? How do you see things playing out?
It's funny you use the word telegraph, because that's exactly what I used. That night, I did 2 videos, one as the attack was happening and the other one after the attack. And I think it was in the first one I was saying, look, as you can see, because, 5 hours before, we knew that drones and missiles were on their way to Israel. And I was saying, look, this is one of the problems that Iran has got in terms of like direct engagement with Israel and attacking Israel is the distance. So it doesn't have a sophisticated air force. Its prize are the missiles and the drones. And with the missiles and the drones, because of the distance, it's like in boxing, you refer to something like telegraph punch.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, it means like, you tell the other opponent, you're going, instead of like being an element of surprise, you just say, look, I'm going to punch you, and he's going to be ready for it. It's called the telegraph punch. And that's more or less what it was. If it was supposed to be a military operation should have an element of surprise in it. This didn't have any element of surprise in it. This was a telegraph punch. I think they may have thought that the sheer numbers would overwhelm Israel's Iron Dome. But what they didn't bank on was that a lot of the missiles fell. Some of them actually fell on Iranian soil. Mm-hmm. I think something like maybe as much as half of them actually failed. And the other thing is that Israel wasn't alone in
I was surprised by that.
Tracing the missiles, and so it was helped by Americans, by the British, by the Jordanians, and I think to some extent by the French as well. So it looks like it was more of a propaganda exercise for its own supporters to save face. And I was watching the Iran state media and Iran.
Yeah, I watched your post on that. They were kind of they were basically doing violence porn. They were just getting some old images from other conflicts and so forth, and substituting the fires and this and that all as how it seems.
There was a Texas fire that they was using images of that, saying that this was Israel. There was that time when Poland got hit by missiles that at first they thought they were Russian missiles and turned out to be failed Ukrainian missiles, and various other footage from other events, just so that its own supporters, its own stupid supporters would think, oh my God, like, what an impact we're having. And look, just to quote one of my sources within the regime, the regime doesn't want to get into a direct war with Israel or with any country, actually. It's this. They actually say they praise the supreme leader as one of his most praised skills for them is that he's managed to stop Iran from getting into a direct conflict, despite all the havoc that it creates in the region, because it uses its proxies instead. And the reason they don't want to get into a war right now is for two reasons. One is they just don't have the economy for it. And two, they know that they don't have the popular support. So it looks like this was more a face-saving exercise for its supporters. I don't think they hoped that much about a military success as such. And it wasn't a military success. It was a bit of a disaster.
So their supporters and the popular kind of sentiment. Who are their supporters these days? Are they able to buy enough people in business and whatnot? I assume there has to be kind of a quasi-fascistic aspect where certain companies get favored by being aligned with the regime. You're not going to probably do very well in business if you're not. So they must. I assume there's commerce going on. How well would commerce be going if there were not an Islamic Republic? Does at any point does it turn a little bit like the Chinese experiment, where communism was the kind of the title? It's still called the Communist Party of China, but really it's kind of a mafia-ocracy. There's basically a it's there for business, kind of more of a corporatism aspect. Is there some point at which Iran might be tempered by its business elements, or is this kind of the Islamic aspect going to continue ad infinitum, and with the price of alienating a certain amount of the public who can't do anything about it anyway? They still wear the chador and whatnot because why not? I mean, because the power is there.
Yeah, it's a difficult question to answer. I mean, it can't continue like this. But when is it going to change? It's hard to say. It's hard to put a date on it. But in terms of its support, I mean, I actually think it's got more support outside Iran amongst the Shia Muslims living outside Iran in places like Iraq or Pakistan or Lebanon and that, than actually inside Iran. Inside Iran, I'd say only about 5% of the population are supporters of the regime. But at the end of the day, Iran is depends on oil as the like state economy, and a lot of people are dependent on state economy. They work for the state, so they are opposed to the regime, but it's just that much more difficult for them to openly oppose the regime. But the one section of the population which is openly opposing the regime are the women. I mean, I predicted during the beginning of the uprising, if you watch that interview I had with Lawrence Fox, I said the minimum from this uprising would be that the mandatory hijab would not be able, they won't be able to implement it. You know, they won't change the law. The law will still stand, but it'd be like the satellite dishes and satellite receiving equipment. By law, it's illegal to have them, but everyone has them, and they can't do anything about it because just too many people have it. And that's what it turned out like. So the hijab law is still there, the mandatory hijab law is there, but more and more Iranian women, especially the younger girls, are just openly walking the streets without hijab. Now, on Saturday, just before the night when they attacked Israel, they tried to reinforce it again because a couple of days before that, the Supreme Leader said that this is wrong, this can't go on anymore, and it has to be enforced. And those women that are not observing the hijab, they are breaking the law, and they're acting on the interests of the foreigners. So Saturday was a show of force inside Iran as well. And it's sort of continued since Saturday. We see the morality police back on the street. We see more footage of women being accosted by the law enforcement forces. One footage that I saw today was like a woman was being tasered because she wouldn't put her hijab on. So do you get the image? It's like they're tough on their own people. They're tough on women. And they're totally ineffective when it comes to a competent, strong enemy like Israel. So it gives you that impression that they really are a paper target, despite all their saber rattling and everything. They can't conduct a war, a full-scale war. And the economy is just failing. So something has got to change. This can't go on forever. They can't go on with these archaic Islamic laws and ways of thinking that the mullahs and ayatollahs have. But then again, they're just ultra-conservative people that just never change with the time. They've always held Iran back. I mean, we've had these ayatollahs and that for around about 400 years in our history. They haven't always been around. And the decline of the Persian Empire, the decline of Iran is all linearly related to the rise of the clerics, the Shia clerics that were imported from Lebanon into Iran 400 years ago by the Safavid dynasty. They've held Iran back on all fronts. They've opposed all versions of modernity. Everything new they've opposed. They opposed fridges. They opposed showers. They opposed videos. Everything that was new, they've opposed for a while. In some cases, then they've just like had to give up, but they just don't seem to change. Everything about them belongs to so many centuries ago. There's nothing modern about it. It's like I think the Nazis were very anti-modern as well, weren't they? The modernity was sort of like decadence to them, and it's the same with these ayatollahs. But that will be their downfall because they just don't change. But when that downfall will be, I don't know. It's hard to predict. It's obviously getting nearer. I mean, you know, I compare it with 40 years ago when they had so much popular support. after the revolution. And where is that now? It's just completely dwindled.
So does that extend beyond? I mean, most of what I see is from Tehran. Is Tehran's situation generalizable to Shiraz or other cities in Iran? I mean, and smaller towns and whatnot. I mean, is there kind of a national sense? And when these kind of I don't know what you want to call them, these various uprisings, like during the Obama years, I don't think we really. I thought it was kind of a major popular uprising. Was it called Green? I'm not sure which color it was. Does that happen?
2009.
Yes.
Yeah, the green movement. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I mean, a sub question would be, did we do the right thing? Did Obama do his apology tour? Bow to the leaders and whatnot, as he did, kind of literally, and they do it figuratively to Iran. But what is the special thing we have between Obama and Biden towards Iran? Why do we keep shoveling money in the United States? I know some of it's technically theirs, locked up from 1979 or whatever. But why do we keep releasing these billions of dollars, $400 million in cash, pallets of cash to Iran? What happened to all that money? Do you think it kind of fueled the fire we are in right now? A. But B, is there hope for other popular movements? And what happens to them? Are they all going to meet the same fate?
So a lot of questions there, but I think the U.S. administrations, first of all, they're advised by the wrong people. I mean, I've been to the State Department before. I don't know if I told you in my previous interviews when I went on that International Visitors Leadership Program, and that was during George Bush's time. Maybe that was another interview. Maybe that was with David Wu. I can't remember. But straight away, I sense that they wrongly informed about Iran, and they're being advised wrong by the wrong people. The other thing about it is that they don't have a long-term policy on Iran. So you have every administration that comes in, and they think, oh, we know how to deal with Iran. We know how to get into a dialogue and how to get into a deal with it. And then when that administration leaves, they just about realize that they've been wrong. But then another administration comes in, and it's like back to square one again. And this is not just my words. This was, I think that was, I actually heard that in a meeting. I can't remember the guy's name, but it was one of Clinton's advisors. Mm-hmm. And there's no long-term policy on what to do with Iran. Whereas, say Russia, for example, they had long-term policies, foreign policies, regional policies. They're also like long-term strategic policies. You don't get that in the US. Every administration comes in and it's just back to square one, repeating the same mistakes again.
Well, I think the Trump administration didn't, at least very least, they didn't sign on to the JCPOA, the Iran deal, as we call it.
Yeah, but unfortunately, that only lasted 4 years.
I know, I understand, but I'm just saying it's not all the same. I think it's mostly been, kind of feckless Obama. I mean, there's Obama 1, Obama 2. I think Trump, years was in a sense like a shadow of Obama 3, because of the way he was neutered from the Mueller report and a lot of other kind of counter rearguard motions they did in state. And now we have Obama 4. Valerie Jarrett, she's got some kind of Iranian connection. But yeah, it just seems like we're dealing in my little local town. As a side note, like many cities in the United States, we have schools. We have public schools, and the school committee is voted for by the city, and we have elections. But the teachers' union is so powerful in the elections that they kind of get to sway. They're on both sides of the negotiating table. So there's an analogy. So when their contracts come up, a lot of the negotiators are there voted in by the teachers money, because they are the single largest contributor to local elections, because they have the most invested. They have a powerful union, so forth. So you're not going to get a good deal with the teachers when both sides, when the teachers are on one side and the teachers' pets, or the teachers, I guess, kind of purchase properties on the other. And I kind of feel that way with certain ways we negotiate. And again, I think Obama had this, kind of vision partially because of his, quasi-Muslim past or whatever, and this kind of romanticization of Islam and the call to prayer is the most beautiful sound he's ever heard, etc. And he has this kind of fantasy. He's missing a dad, and he's like searching for a dad figure. And Islam, if nothing else, is certainly a male, kind of figure, and power and whatnot. And I just feel as if a lot of these deals were negotiating on both sides of the table from Iran's point of view. I just didn't see what we're getting out of it, and then to believe Iran, as if they're going to follow any of this. So I'm just curious, what's your kind of overview of the JCPOA, and what do we get out of it? And does Iran even abide by any of that stuff?
It gave Iran a lifeline. That's what I said at the time. The economy was on the brink of collapse, and the U.S. administration just gave it a lifeline. And it was one of the most painful things to watch when I saw John Kerry in an interview saying that the cash that they were going to send to Iran, he was confident that Iran wouldn't spend it on Hezbollah. And how can you be so stupid? What, honestly, you really think he thought because the Iranian economy was in such a bad shape that the Iranian regime would definitely spend it on improving the economy and improving the living conditions of its people. See, this is one of the reasons why they make so many mistakes about Iran. They put themselves in their position and start thinking logically. They put themselves in their position and saying, well, if we were there, we would, the people are having a hard time. So,
yeah, it's like you can see it basically played out in the money to Hamas. I think if Dubai were given the choice of staying where, let's say you could, let's say the country were chess pieces, and somehow Dubai could get off being on the Persian Gulf and be on the Mediterranean where Gaza is. I'm not sure how much bigger Dubai is geographically than Gaza, the territory that is there. But if Dubai could blink its eyes and say, you know what, we're going to just move all the buildings, everything, and we could put them right on the Mediterranean. I mean, wouldn't they take that? Isn't that like better real estate? Doesn't Gaza have better real estate than Dubai, than Qatar and whatnot? I was in Qatar for very briefly, and it was, it's horrible, sweltering. I mean, unbearable weather for 5 months of the year. You can barely be outside. And here you are on the Mediterranean. I mean, it's like, this is kind of bliss. I mean, people pay fortunes to, have a little Greek island and whatnot. And Gaza basically has that. Now, the money that got spent for Gaza all went to the Gaza metro, but it wasn't a subway system, And, how
it was the tunnels, yeah.
Right, no, but it's just the same thing. It's like
they built a lot of tunnels.
Yeah, but they're willing to basically starve the people, relatively speaking. They're not starving per se, but during that 19 years of self-rule there, 2005 to 2024. But the money that comes in, they're not building Dubai scrapers. They're not building walkways and trams and all that kind of stuff. They're building stuff for war. That's it, and they're willing to sacrifice. And I think that's the same. Even though Hamas is not technically Shia, I think it's clearly an that same kind of austerity that is in the figure of your supreme leaders and all the other top mullahs and whatnot. I mean, they're doing the long game, and they're willing to go without food and tinsel and whatnot, and take it for undermining the vast enemy, which is a religious war. And so I don't see how you couldn't miss that. That would seem to be Iran 101. Like, first lesson in Iran is like, take a look at what you have there. Take a look at the leaders. They're not. You can say what you want about Hamas's leaders, maybe hanging out, gambling or whatnot, but I don't think the Ayatollahs do that. And so I think they walk their walk and talk their talk. And I'm not saying they're good managers of a country, but they are willing to prep for war. And I think their proxies are very, very effective and very inexpensive. It's a very good frugal shopping on the military basis.
Yeah, I mean, the same can be said about Iran. I mean, as a tourist place, I mean, Iran would be a heaven for tourists. There's so many beautiful places. We have everything. We have the seaside, we have the forest, we have the mountains, we have the deserts. All the kind of climate you can think of. You can go skiing in Iran. You can go sunbathing in Iran. The income from tourism would be enormous, just by itself. But apart from these sort of like world travelers that like to go to all these like
Yeah.
awkward places and everything. I mean, you wouldn't get ordinary tourists to go to Iran. Why would they go to Iran? Why would the family, European family, go to Iran and spend their money in there when they're, the females won't be able to sort of like dress as they want to. They won't be able to have any alcoholic drinks. And risk being taken as hostages. By the way, something really interesting today. A key regime figure, a guy called Rafik, who's become very wealthy after the revolution. He used to be, he was actually the one who drove Khomeini on his return from the airport to the cemetery. An absolute nobody before the revolution, but he's now become very wealthy. He was on state TV, and he was saying that Iran has weapons that no other superpower has.
Yeah.
We have very sophisticated weapons.
I saw the thing about hostages and everything.
And we also got hostages. And if anyone dares to attack, we've got hostages from every country. And if anyone dares to attack us, we will kill the hostages. And then he says, I hope an opportunity will come when we can kill the hostages. I mean, these guys are absolute psychopaths. They're
so is anything of what he said actually true?
It's true. What was it?
Do they have hostages from every country? I mean, wouldn't we have heard about this already, or they can take?
No, it's I don't know if every single country. I mean, he must have exaggerated there, but there are a lot of hostages that they're keeping from various countries, and some of the countries that they have kept it quiet in the past. So I mean, there was an American hostage that we didn't even know about it until one of his Iranian cellmates managed to come to Europe and then talked about it, and the Americans had kept it all hushed up and hadn't talked about it. So, and various other examples like this. So, yeah, there are a lot of hostages that are not making the news. Whether they have a hostage from every single country, I doubt it, but they have a lot of hostages.
Yeah, there's Evan Gershkowitz, I think, from the Wall Street Journal, who has the triple benefit of being A, reporter, B, Jewish, I think, and C, American. I mean, I don't know. And, that doesn't seem like our guys have really been, pushing. Joe Biden has not been pushing for him, or any of his people have not been really pushing for the release. I think they've labeled him an Israeli spy or something like that. I'm not sure.
There's also another hostage, is German-American citizen who had an IT company, who's actually been sentenced to death. Her daughter, Azarmehr, has been very vociferous in America to try to get to save his father, but to no avail until now. But one thing about his case is he didn't go to Iran. He didn't travel to Iran or anything. He went to India during the COVID because he was subcontracting some of his IT companies' work to companies in India. So he had to go to India to meet some of these people. And then he had an indirect flight to go back to America, which stopped at Dubai. So he was actually at the Dubai terminal waiting to get his next flight to America. And that's where he was kidnapped. Now, one thing that no one talks about is, how was he kidnapped from the Dubai airport? There must have been some assistance by someone in Dubai, someone the authorities in Dubai, to kidnap him from inside an airport and take him back to Iran. And I mean, an airport you think is the most secure place. No one talks about that. No one says, well, how was he actually kidnapped? What are the details
why this individual?
Sorry?
Why did they take him? Do we have any idea?
Oh, because he had this opposition. He led this opposition group, which was very much against the regime and very much against Islam. They've accused him of masterminding some explosion in some mosque that killed a lot of people, but I don't know if he could have ever done that from inside America.
Does he have Persian roots at all?
Yeah, he's Iranian born and Iranian by all accounts, but he was one of those many Iranians that left Iran after the revolution. He was in Germany first, and then from Germany he emigrated to America. So he's got German and American citizenship. And
Hmm.
while there's been some publicity about his case and it's been in the media there, but no one's asking the question: how was he kidnapped from the airport in Dubai?
Yeah, one of those things, huh?
Yeah. But with regards to these hostages, I mean, like, there was also a case of, I think it was in the last presidential. No, it was in the not last president. I mean, when I say presidential elections, I mean, you know what I mean. It's not proper elections, but what
Hmm.
they call elections. Not the last one, but the one before that, I think. And one of the candidates, Mohsen Rezai, who was at one time the head of the Revolutionary Guards, as part of his manifesto for generating more revenue, was to take more foreign hostages, because every time they release a hostage for a ransom money, Iran gets paid. So that was one of in his sort of like manifesto program for Iran to generate revenue by taking more hostages. You see, once you reward bad behavior, it just goes on. So um, when they took on the U.S. embassy hostages in 1980 in Iran, um, I remember Richard Nixon was saying that he would not have negotiated with Iran, not because he didn't care about the hostages, but because it would set a precedence for more.
Absolutely.
And the Carter administration, I mean, they did everything they could to appease the Ayatollahs, and in the long run, I think it went against American interests, because it showed that by taking hostages,
Well, it's an
you
interesting
can.
point. It just seems to me that there's kind of this soft application of power, that it's implicit with this kind of, Jimmy Carter went on to do this Habitat for Humanity, where he'd build houses. He'd take a hammer and build houses. And I understand this kind of supplication and bowing down to the poor and the weak and all that kind of stuff. Um, but what we're seeing, like the last few days, I don't know if you follow this on the bridges, all and highways all through the United States, Golden Gate Bridge, O'Hare Airport, I think the Brooklyn Bridge in New York. People are just standing there. They're having these kind of sit-ins, reminiscent of the Occupy movement and Black Lives Matter, and now it's free, free Palestine, whatever. And they just stand in front of the bridge, and they're happening in Paris, I believe. Also, people are just kind of flopping on the street, and then nobody will drive them over. So this is the analogy. I mean, it's an unfortunate thing. Hostages, I think, are what, in a sense, I mean, Israel has a kind of a different standard. They have to, they have this cohesion, this family aspect, that we're all in this together. We will get everybody, and they pay exorbitant amounts for, like, the corpse, the rotted corpse of a soldier. They'll give like 1,000 prisoners who come back and shoot at them later.
Mm.
But it seems to me that there's this kind of the soft power that was exemplified by Carter during the hostage crisis. But we see over and over again where somebody sits in the road and nobody will drive them over. Nobody can be aggressive to that person, because you will have more problems by hitting the person who's been blocking thousands and thousands of people, and or fight him or whatever. You're going to be in trouble for touching that person. And it becomes kind of this, weird inversion of society and their norms. I mean, you can't get anything done. If I've been, on my way to the airport or something like that in Chicago, I'm sitting there 3 hours, where somebody who's 120 pounds can't be moved from the street, because nobody wants to. I mean, I don't know how you deal with that stuff. I don't think Iran necessarily gets slowed down, or Dubai for
Well,
that matter, by
I,
that kind of thing.
I was watching some of this footage that you're talking about, and in some of them, I heard people chant. They seem to be American citizens, chant "Death to America," as well as
Mhm.
burning the U.S. flag. Now, even
Yeah.
during the Vietnam War and the Vietnam War protests, I don't recall the protesters ever chanting "Death to
I
America"
wonder where they
inside
could have.
America.
I wonder where they could have gotten that phrase. And I think they're literally being
Well,
coached by Irani.
Did you
Yeah,
also see that
yeah,
footage where there's
yeah.
a press TV employee and he's like training these leftards on how to
No,
protest and teaching them how to say "Death to America"?
yeah. Well, I saw the one in Chicago where all the, kind of, I don't know what I call them, useful idiots, I guess. They're all wearing, like, 80% of them wearing COVID masks, and there's an Irani guy, I assume from.
That's the one. That's the one I'm talking about.
Yeah, he's lecturing them like how to
Yeah,
say in Farsi, how to say "death to America."
that's America. Yeah, I mean, what is it with these people that they are they on a self-destruction button? I mean, do they
Yeah,
know that they actually live in America? Do they want to destroy the country where they live in? Like I said, I don't remember during the Vietnam War protests. I don't remember the
it's,
protesters ever chanting "Death to America."
yeah, it's weird. I mean, we've gotten smarter ostensibly. We have so much more information. I have the entire Library of Congress on a little.
Well,
You
this
know,
is the other thing that amazes me. I mean, I always envy this generation. I mean, I always say to my children, you've got so many ways of learning. In our days, it was just the library, the local library. And if they didn't have a book about the subject, you
yeah,
didn't know what to do. But
yeah.
now you can do anything. You can learn editing online. You can
I know
learn
it's
about
incredible.
nuclear physics. You can do a
Yeah,
whole degree course
yeah.
on
It's
the
just funny.
internet,
People
on the
need.
YouTube. So why is it? Why is it that this generation of protesters are so ignorant about their subject and yet so opinionated? I mean, you know, and I've actually talked to some of these protesters. You go up to them and they're chanting "from the river to the sea," and you say, "Which river are you talking about?" They don't know what river it is. So
Yeah,
which sea are you talking about? They don't know what sea it is. They say the Baltic Sea or the Black Sea or something like. And how can you not know? How can you go on a protest and not know enough about the topic that you're protesting against? Um, there was another one where someone was holding a placard saying calling for a socialist intifada, and a well-known British comedian went up to them and said, like, what is a socialist intifada? I said, "Oh, I've got no idea, but it's just someone was giving out this placard and he gave him one up to start walking about." So what this is another conundrum for me. Why is it that this generation that has got so many ways of learning
yeah.
things and
Well,
informing itself, why is it so badly informed and yet so
Well,
opinionated?
my own feeling is we just have a lot of time on our hands, and we don't necessarily make use of it. I think people work well with constraint. If you have less time to do things, you're more focused on the time you have to do that particular thing. I also think if we go back, X number of years, pick a number, 60, 80, 100 years, it was rare for people to have what's called higher education. It was called higher education because nobody else had it. So in the United States, it was rare to go to college 100 years ago. And now everything's kind of everyone does college. But it hasn't made people smarter. There's still the same kind of Gaussian curve, a standard distribution of people. There are going to be idiots, and for everybody of above average intelligence, somebody under average intelligence. And um, I just think that everybody has some kind of degree. They all think that they've gotten used to talking. They've gotten away from tasks. So it used to be that in order to kind of live and eat, you had to be making a belt. You had to be, kind of working at a farm, getting the cow milk, bringing something to market. You had to
Having a
be,
skill.
and not only that, but it didn't give you that much extra time to do that other stuff. There's the expression that the devil's, what is it? Idleness is the devil's playground, or idle hands. And so when you have very little to do, those idle hands just wind up. There's a lot of kind of deep dives. There's pornography. There's anarchy. But people don't necessarily have the power and agency over their own lives of having produced something. So if you're making belts, at the end of the day, you're tired. You made a bunch of belts. You get the money. You have a beer. You're satisfied. Whatever. But people are missing that satisfaction. They're kind of working their time clocks extra. They don't start families. They're not producing. So I think there's this absence of production, and then you have to kind of have. I think it's an emptiness and a void, and so it's
And
um,
they seem to run away from debate. I mean, I love debate. I love talking to people with a different opinion to me because I think I educate myself by talking to people that see the other side of
yeah,
the coin. And I think it's necessary to get as many points of views as possible. Um, but we have a situation where the mass media tries to push just one version of the truth, one narrative, as we saw during COVID, which you better informed than me. We couldn't really have a debate about it. People are labelled. If people have got a different opinion to you, they just get labelled, and the debate is shut down. Do you know today there was a conservative conference in Belgium, and the police actually raided it and shut it down because it was labelled as far right, and you had regular mainstream people in there. You had the former UK Home
Yeah,
Secretary.
they would if they what they should they were idiots because they should have said it. They should have called the Hezbollah conference.
Yeah, they wouldn't have shut that down.
No, that's the thing, and that's the oddity is that people who are aimless they craft and they guide to power. So these guys present powerfully, and they're like, oh, it's like I don't know. There's just not a lot of thinking going on. It's a sadness.
Yeah, I mean, I think getting back to debate is really essential. It's only when I watch two different sides argue with each other that I make a better judgment. Pushing one narrative to me is communism. It's Islamic fundamentalism. Shutting down debates in a democratic country doesn't go for me. And whenever I see that, straight away I know something is wrong. Because why should you be scared of having a debate? If you're confident about your position, why should you be scared about having a debate?
I know, it's hilarious. So, what do you think? Do you think? I don't know. We're going to go for predictions here. Do you think Israel kind of quote unquote takes the victory and goes home, or is there some other retaliation? And my math and geography skills are okay, and so I'm just imagining that as far as Iran is distant from Israel, Israel has that same distance away from Iran. So, and I think Israel has some dependencies. They depend on these allies who, given the demographics of Europe these days with a burgeoning Muslim population, that may not be forever. And so, do they go and prod Iran? Iran? Do they go for some sites? And I imagine those are pretty hardened sites if they want to get the good ones.
Yeah, I'm not in a position to give an intelligent answer on that. But the one advantage that Israel has that Iran doesn't have is that Israel can use its air force, and it has the opportunities and the facilities to refuel on its way to the Iranian sites. But I mean, you need to have a lot of intelligence at your disposal to make a good decision on whether you're going to do something like that or not. And there seems to be a lot of pressure on Israel as well to just take what happened on Saturday as a win and don't escalate any further. But the one thing about war and any military operation is that it's very unpredictable. I mean, I think Israel is actually one of the best when it comes to surgical strikes. I mean, what they did on that building in Syria, where they took on the top Iranian Revolutionary Guards. I mean, that was just like a surgical attack. It was just something. Yeah, it was amazing that even the buildings next to it just went damaged. Or when they took on some of the Hamas or Hezbollah figures, it was just one floor in a multi-story building that they took out. But even so, things can go wrong, and you've got this sort of like the bulk of the Iranian population who are against the regime, and they sympathise with Israel. They see Israel as their ally, really. And if anything goes wrong, if you have a lot of civilian casualties, then it's a different ball game. So.
Right.
I'm not in a position to answer that question or to make a prediction because you need a lot of good intelligence at your disposal to be able to make a decision whether to go for a strike on some key facilities. I mean, are they able to strike just at a missile depot? I mean, it's something that they've done before without actually. There was a missile depot that was blown up, and the person that they called the father of Iran missile program was killed. Tehrani Moghadam was killed, and then they were saying that the supreme leader was due to visit the depot and change his mind at the last minute. And from what I heard, that was some kind of a sabotage because the GPS things that they'd bought through intermediaries for the missiles, they were doctored so that they could be remotely used to cause an explosion. So something like that is they can do, but anything else? I mean, if it risk civilian casualties, it could really change the equation. And is it worth taking that risk? Unless you have to be really sure. So, really not in a position to answer your question on that, Randall.
All right, so we're rounding out the hour. I was unaware of the Lebanon connection. I mean, you mentioned it last time.
But just one thing. See, I think if I was an Israeli, this is what I would think. So I think so Iran has done this attack, and somehow you've got to stop it from doing another attack. So how do you do it? Do you do it by striking back to make sure that they can't do it again, or by doing that you escalate it and you give reason for them to strike back? It is a very, very difficult decision. I wouldn't like to be in the position of the person making that decision.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Hezbollah is still sitting there. I think.
But one thing I can answer is, look, before, I mean, as far as Britain is concerned, before striking back at Iran or anything like that, why don't you just shut down their outlets here? Surely this is something that is well overdue.
Shut down their what?
The outlets, the Iranian outlets in this country that are acting as the fifth column. The thing that I talked about in the beginning in that policy exchange report. I mean, surely that is a precedent to any military strike on Iran. Do that to begin with. Yeah. Because if you're going to go to a military conflict with another state, how can you have its fifth column on your soil? How can you allow its fifth column to function as business as usual?
I do not know.
So that's an easier answer than saying whether Israel should strike Iran or not.
Yep. All right. So if people want to follow you, here it is. Only posted for people.
Yeah, I've actually my latest video is on that policy exchange report, on that policy exchange paper. I mean, I'm not talking about all the things in that 87 page, but just a couple of interesting extracts from the report are in the video. I haven't posted it on Twitter yet. I will do later, but they can go to my YouTube channel and watch that video.
So is this your YouTube channel?
Yeah.
So here's your YouTube channel for people. And just as a last plug, if you want to help support my video cast here, you can go buy my book, Overturning Zika. I'm working on a couple other books. This is nothing to do with Iran so far, but interesting book, and I think you should check it out and help support the work we do here. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah, thank you. And I was going to plug a book as well. It's not one that I've written.
Okay.
But I forgot about it. It's actually written by a friend of mine, Sol Zadka, and it's called British Suicide. And it's about all the complacency that the British state has shown in the last 20 years with Islamists. And I'm actually mentioned in the book. I should have plugged that, but maybe next time. I'm actually reading it now. I'm on just got into the second chapter.
I can't find it fast enough to put it up. I apologize.
No, don't worry about it. I'll let you know about it next time.
All right, perfect. Well, you have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you so much for being on.